On the first day of December, I got the news I had been dreading for months. Every single test confirmed it. I have stage 4 pancreatic cancer. That means, without a doubt, this will be my last holiday season. Surprisingly, I am at peace with it. I have had a good life, a full life, and I have made sure that all the people I care about will be taken care of after I am gone. I am not one to share much about myself, so my wife, Carol, did not know anything about the tests I had been undergoing. I did not want to worry her until I had concrete answers. But now it was time. I left work early that day, determined to have the talk with her face to face. A conversation like this is not something you have over the phone or through a text message. When I got home, though, I immediately noticed something odd. Sitting in our driveway was the car of one of my business partners, Dean. That car is impossible to miss. It is flashy, expensive, and has a personalized license plate. It was completely out of the ordinary for him to be there. My gut told me something was wrong. Before going inside, I pulled up our home security system on my phone. To my surprise, the system was set to privacy mode, meaning the cameras were not recording. That had never happened before, but I let it slide. Instead of going inside, I decided to head to my farm property to think things over. Our camera system is mostly for safety, and I rarely check it unless there is a specific reason. That said, I do enjoy watching the outdoor cameras to see wildlife or to observe storms rolling through. For my own amusement, I had set up a second video recorder years ago to archive the footage to a separate local storage system. That setup is not connected to my phone, so I had to access it from my computer at the farm. When I logged in and reviewed the footage, my fears were confirmed. There on the screen were Carol and Dean, sitting in the living room, snuggling on the couch, sipping wine, and dancing together. After a while, they headed upstairs to our bedroom. Even though the cameras did not follow them, the microphone picked up enough for me to know exactly what they were doing. That afternoon, my world changed in ways I had never imagined. With so little time left in my life, I decided I wanted answers, but I had no interest in a dramatic confrontation or going through the hassle of a divorce. Call me a coward if you want, but all the love and devotion I had felt for Carol disappeared that day. I felt numb. I had been loyal, attentive, and loving throughout our marriage, and yet here we were. I reached out to my lawyer that evening. We went through my will and reviewed the prenuptial agreement Carol and I had signed before we got married. I told him everything I had discovered. Together, we started piecing together how long and to what extent this affair had been going on. The more I learned, the clearer it became that either I had never truly known the woman I had spent over 20 years with, or something in her had fundamentally changed. For now, I have decided not to tell anyone, not my children, not Carol, no one. Carol and I do not have kids together, but I have 2 grown children from a previous relationship. They have children of their own now, and I want to give them one last happy holiday season with me before I am gone. I plan to smile, play the role of the doting father and grandfather, and even pretend to be the loving husband for the time being. Here is some context for those wondering. Dean is a widower and has never remarried. He is a business partner but not someone I would consider a friend. I made it a rule to never mix business with personal friendships. My children's mother, Sarah, and I were never married. That was her choice, and looking back, I think it was the right decision at the time. When our kids were 7, Sarah married a wonderful man named Steve. They never had kids of their own, but Steve has been a great stepfather. Sarah, Steve, and I co-parented our children well. I would even call Steve a friend. I married Carol in my early 30s. This was the first marriage for both of us. Now, in our 60s, I am left wondering what happened to the life we built together. Dean is in his 50s, and I cannot help but wonder how long this has been going on behind my back. What do I need right now? An outlet, a way to vent my anger and process what has happened. If I want to make the most of the time I have left, I need to let this out somewhere. Talking to strangers on the internet seems like as good an option as any. Sharing this here helps me make peace with how and when my life will end. And honestly, it feels good just to say it all out loud. First, I want to express my heartfelt gratitude to everyone who has offered their support. It truly means a lot to me, and reading all your comments has given me much to think about. Let me provide some context to clarify my situation a bit more. Sarah and I were very young when we had the twins. They were unexpected but always wanted, and we did our best to give them a good life. Now the twins are in their 40s, and my grandchildren are all teenagers or older. Christmas is a big deal in our family. Every year, we spend a week from Christmas through New Year's together at the farm. It is a tradition. Once everyone arrives, we cut down a tree, decorate it, cook, play games, and celebrate as a family. Sarah and Steve have been part of this tradition ever since I bought the farm. I have decided to stick with my plan not to tell anyone about my condition until after the new year. If I told Sarah now, she would not be able to keep it to herself, and I do not want to put Steve in a position where he has to lie to his wife. My goal is to let the kids and grandkids enjoy this holiday week without a cloud hanging over it. There will be plenty of time to grieve and prepare in the weeks to come. As for Jane's presence this week, it is just a minor detail to me at this point. I do not feel much for her anymore, not compared to how I feel about the rest of my family. Now about the finances. Jane and I met and married after we were both well established in our careers and financially secure. She has a good job with a great pension and also inherited 2 trusts. Early in our relationship, she insisted that we would not fully disclose our individual net worths to each other. She also pushed for a prenuptial agreement stating that any property or assets acquired before the marriage, as well as any income derived from those assets, would not be considered marital property. I agreed to this. Since our marriage, I have provided the houses, paid for utilities, travel, food, and fuel. Essentially, I have supported her entirely. Jane's income and wealth have been used exclusively for her own expenses, her car, clothes, personal trips, and even cosmetic surgery. While she may be beautiful on the outside, her recent actions have shown me how ugly she can be on the inside. A few days after I got my diagnosis, I announced my retirement from the nonprofit organization I had been working with. Looking back, I noticed that Jane seemed uncomfortable with the news. I can only assume it is because I will now be home more often. Tomorrow is officially my last day of work, and I plan to spend my remaining time focusing on my family. I have given my lawyer access to the camera server and all the recorded footage. I do not know if Jane and Dean have met up again since the last time, but honestly, I do not care anymore. I know who I am and what I am worth. Dean is a significant step down. Despite his flashy exterior, I know he does not have the wealth Jane likely assumes he does. How do I know? The trust that I manage has invested in his business, so I receive quarterly financial reports. I do not flaunt my wealth. That is just not who I am. I drive a 15-year-old pickup truck and wear jeans, t-shirts, and coveralls during the winter. The trust one oversee has been growing steadily for 30 years, and I live modestly. It is structured in such a way that my great-great-grandchildren will be able to enjoy the farm and have their educations paid for. Jane will eventually realize what she has lost, but I will not be around to see it. December has been a whirlwind of activity. We attended our usual round of social events over the past few weekends, and Dean was present at one of the parties. It was tough not to watch Jane and him closely, but I do not think anyone noticed. Between these events and wrapping up things at work, I have found it easier to hold myself together. Jane has not given any indication that she knows I am aware of her affair. For now, I continue to share the same bed with her, though I feel conflicted about it. Lately, I have been selfish in how I interact with her. It feels like I am using her, but then again, she has been using me for quite some time. It is not something I am proud of, but it is where I am. For those concerned about Jane walking away with everything, rest assured she will not. The trust is in capable hands, and I have left detailed instructions about how it is to be managed. Thanks to some of the advice I have received, I have made contingency plans in case my health deteriorates faster than expected or if I pass away suddenly. I have arranged for in-home care when the time comes, and Jane will not be my caregiver. If I become incapacitated, my lawyer will inform Sarah, Steve, and the kids, and Jane will be blocked from access to me. I have already moved all important documents, valuables, and other items to a secure location. I have also started writing letters to each family member, including Jane. Writing these letters has been more challenging than I anticipated. As we head into the holiday week, I wanted to update everyone before the festivities begin. I may check in during the week, but if I do not, it is part of the plan. Thank you all again for your support. It means the world to me. Mission accomplished. We had a great, drama-free holiday week, and I am happy to report that I made it to 2023. I apologize in advance if my humor about my condition offends anyone. It helps me cope. I admit I am being a bit selfish right now. The family all left yesterday afternoon, and while I will not go into details about my week with them, I will say that it is something I will cherish forever. Now, as for my wife, Jane, and her behavior during the week, it became even more clear to me that this is likely her first affair. Spending the entire week with the family seemed to weigh heavily on her. When you know about someone's secrets, their actions start making more sense. Jane was very protective of her phone and stepped outside our gatherings multiple times to get some air. The most blatant moment was when she said she needed to run into town, and one of the grandkids asked to go along. The mental gymnastics she performed to avoid taking the grandkid were almost comical. I could not resist playing along and asked, "Why not?" just to see her squirm. The affair is definitely ongoing, and now that I am retired, she has been more curious about my daily plans. I share them with her and then turn the tables by asking about hers. Later this week, I plan to suggest we meet up for lunch, coincidentally in the same area she plans to be, just to mess with her. Someone once commented that unpredictability is a cheater's worst enemy, and I am finding that to be true. This morning, I met with my lawyer to finalize some decisions. My temporary will has been replaced with a new permanent one, which I have signed. It should not need to be changed again. In preparation for potential fireworks, I also had divorce papers drawn up based on our prenuptial agreement and the evidence of Jane's affair. According to the prenup, she is entitled to only 25% of our shared assets, which include things like housewares and furniture. I will keep all of my liquid assets, retirement funds, and anything I purchased with my own wealth. Additionally, if I choose to pursue it, she would be required to pay alimony. The divorce papers are signed and packaged, along with all the evidence of her infidelity, ready to be used if necessary. Regarding the trust, I made significant decisions about its management. I sold my loan to the trust, which will allow the trustees to convert it into shares in AP's company. I have decided to reduce my role to a 1% trustee. The twins will take on the majority of the trusteeship, while the 4 grandkids will share the rest. For now, Sarah and Steve will act as proxies for the grandkids until each one turns 24, at which point their trusteeship will transfer to them directly. If there are fractional shares left over, Sarah will handle the extras. I have planned a meeting with the kids, Sarah, and Steve for next week to explain everything. They will need to sign documents, and they will undoubtedly want to know why I am making these changes. When all is said and done, my personal wealth will consist of my liquid assets, personal property, and the money from AP's loan. In the worst-case scenario, Jane will receive very little compared to the value held in the trust. Over the next couple of weeks, I will distribute personal items I want the kids and grandkids to have. These items are already stored in a secure location that my lawyer can access. As for my health, I want to clarify that I am not undergoing treatment. I have decided to let nature take its course. This means I am not dealing with the side effects of treatments, but I have noticed that I tire more easily. The family picked up on this during the week, and I played it off as just getting older. The persistent cough, which led to the initial diagnosis, remains. I told everyone it is a lingering effect of COVID. I expect things to decline quickly once other symptoms emerge, but by then, everyone will already know the truth. Thank you to everyone who has sent well wishes about my health. It means a lot. Looking ahead, I plan to spend as much quality time with my family as possible. Organizing a large trip with everyone's busy schedules would be difficult, which is why this past week was so important to me. It was likely the last extended time I will have with all of them together. I am considering a small trip for myself, but my main goal is to spend one-on-one time with each child and grandchild. The letters I am writing to my loved ones remain a work in progress. They are proving to be much harder to complete than I anticipated. I will update you all after the family meeting next week. Thank you again for all your support. Best wishes to all of you. I gathered my lawyer, a notary, my 2 children, Sarah and Steve, at the farm today. The necessary tasks are finally completed. Understandably, the atmosphere was tense. The family knew something serious was coming as soon as they saw the lawyer and notary present. I began by asking everyone to take a seat and listen without interruptions. I told them that once I finished explaining everything, they would sign some documents. After that, I would answer all their questions. The family has always been aware of the trust. I explained to them that it was now time for me to hand over its control. I shared the importance of the trust in my life, why I started it, and how it was structured to exist independently of my marriage to Jane, a decision we mutually agreed upon. I detailed how I wanted them to manage it moving forward. The trust would be split between my children and grandchildren, with Sarah and Steve acting as proxy voters for the grandchildren until they each turned 25. Their faith in me was clear as they signed the documents without hesitation. The notary verified everything, and the necessary copies were collated. I then dismissed the lawyer and notary, thanking them for their professionalism and for coming out on a Sunday. When I returned to the dining room, which had become an impromptu conference room, the silence was palpable. My daughter broke it with a barrage of questions that came out as a stream of consciousness. Once she paused, I began explaining my health situation. I shared my diagnosis, laying out the facts. Naturally, their first instinct was to rally around me and start discussing plans to fight it. But I stopped them. I told them I had already sought a second opinion and explained my decision to let nature take its course. I was not going to pursue treatment. This sparked over an hour of arguing and emotional outbursts. My daughter left the room several times, with Sarah stepping out to comfort her. While they were gone, Steve, my son, and I had a heartfelt conversation. Though they may not agree with my decision, they understood my reasoning. The consensus was that Sarah and my daughter would eventually come around to it. When the room calmed, I knew the inevitable next question was coming. When did you find out? I told them the truth about the timing of my diagnosis. This revelation led to another wave of anger and sadness. I explained that I wanted one last holiday week where I could simply be Dad and Grandpa, not a man marked by illness. I admitted it was selfish, but I wanted the diagnosis to come after the holidays, so it would not tarnish their memories of that special time. Sensing there was more I had not said, my daughter went full detective mode. She would not let up until everything was out in the open. That is when I revealed what I shared in my first post, Jane's betrayal. I described exactly what happened and how I discovered it. For the first time, I saw true fire and anger in my daughter's eyes. I also told them that Jane still did not know I was aware of her affair. I reassured them that I valued them far more than I valued Jane. My priority was to spend my remaining days in peace, free from the turmoil she caused. I explained the steps I had taken to protect the trust and how it ensured Jane could not touch what I had worked so hard to build. They asked about her behavior during the holiday week, piecing together her excuses to step outside for air and her unwillingness to bring a grandchild on her trip to town. They were worried that I had been going through all of this alone. I admitted that I had found solace in an online community, which had helped me navigate the hardest moments. However, I refused to share more about that space, as I wanted to keep it for myself for now. We spent some time discussing the trust again. I emphasized its role in safeguarding the family's future, and why Jane was excluded from the meeting. Then I laid out the financials of the trust. It was clear they had never fully grasped the scope of it. As I went through the assets and balance sheets, the room fell silent. The inevitable question came. Why did you work so hard for all those years when you already had this much? I explained my philosophy of personal finance, something they had heard from me many times before. I reminded them that the trust had allowed me to live comfortably, provide for their education, and spend time with them while working for a nonprofit, effectively for free. More importantly, I told them I wanted the trust to inspire them to do better for others, not just by writing checks but by actively working for causes they believed in. I shared how much more fulfilling it was to build relationships and train others than simply donating money. By the end of the day, I felt a mix of relief and worry. Everyone at that table had their lives changed in significant ways, for better or worse. While it was not the way I wanted things to unfold, I knew it was necessary. They now understood everything. I pleaded with them to let me handle Jane and to keep the details of the trust private. We agreed to maintain the status quo for now, with changes to come when my health inevitably declines. We spent the remaining hours making a meal, talking, crying, laughing, and breaking off into smaller conversations. The twins left about an hour ago, but I expect them to return. I know they will share this news with their spouses, and that is fine. I love my in-laws dearly. Last night was likely my last quiet night. While I feel a weight lifted, it has been replaced with a different burden of worry. Thank you all for listening. Your thoughts and prayers mean the world to me. And please tell your loved ones how you feel and give them a hug. Just a quick update for everyone. I was caught off guard by an unexpected visit from one of Jane's longtime friends, Carol. Carol is about the same age as Jane, and was actually the host of the girls' night out that Jane attended last week. You might remember me mentioning that Jane came home very drunk that evening, using a ride share to get back. What you might not know is that Carol is not just an old friend of Jane's but someone I introduced her to years ago. Carol's parents were close friends of mine growing up, so this connection runs deep. Apparently, Jane's actions and my unpredictability have put her on edge lately. According to Carol, the stress hit a boiling point during that girls' night. Jane got so intoxicated at Carol's house that she ended up confiding in her about the affair. From what Carol shared, it was not just a slip of the tongue. Jane poured her heart out in a flood of details, even as Carol tried to stop her. Carol, understandably, was furious. She confronted Jane about her behavior, but instead of stopping, Jane kept rambling on, trying to justify what she had done. The next day, Carol reached out to Jane, likely hoping for some sort of resolution or acknowledgement. Jane, however, claimed she did not remember saying anything the night before. When Carol summarized the confession, Jane flat out denied everything. She insisted that she was not having an affair, had said no such things, and that Carol was mistaken. But Carol was not buying it. She called Jane out, gave her an ultimatum, and told her she had 1 week to come clean with me, or Carol would do it herself. Since Jane continued to deny it, Carol decided to take matters into her own hands. That is how I ended up having coffee with her today. Carol came over expecting to drop a bombshell that would devastate me. Instead, I surprised her by calmly explaining that I already knew about the affair. Carol was taken aback, but I had a few questions for her. First, I asked if anyone else had been around during Jane's drunken confession. Thankfully, Carol assured me that she was the only one who heard it. Then I asked if she had shared this information with anyone else. That question offended her a bit, but I explained my reasoning, that I had my own timeline for dealing with Jane, and keeping this contained was crucial to my plan. Carol understood after I apologized for doubting her discretion. I also asked her for one favor, to keep this to herself for now and let Jane believe that Carol believed her denials. Carol agreed to keep quiet for now, but she was not entirely comfortable pretending to believe Jane. I told her that I understood and appreciated whatever effort she could make to help me stick to my plan. Carol ended the visit by telling me to reach out if I needed anything else. I know I will owe her another apology when the truth about my health comes out, but that is a bridge I will cross later. As for Jane, I have decided to confront her tomorrow. We have a standing date night, so I will use that time to lay everything out. My plan is to calmly tell her that I know about the affair, explain my health situation, and let her know that I intend to spend the rest of my life without her in it. I am hoping that the public setting will keep the drama to a minimum, but I am prepared for anything. After the confrontation, I plan to hand her the evidence I have gathered and request that she not contact me or my family again. How it will actually play out is anyone's guess, but I will let you all know this weekend. Thank you again for your support. It means the world to me. Mike Tyson once said, "Everyone has a plan until they get punched in the mouth." Truer words have never been spoken. No plan unfolds exactly as envisioned, and mine was no exception. Let me walk you through how I planned things out and how they actually played out. Jane and I have a standing date night at the same restaurant every week. We even have a regular table, a quiet spot in the back, away from the noise of the bar but still in the public eye. I decided this would be the place to confront her, and I planned to wait until dessert was finished to do it. To set the stage, I arranged for my lawyer and his wife to have a reservation at the same time. Before we even began the meal, I prepaid for both of our tables with our longtime server, someone we have known for years. I also had Carol on standby, ready to help Jane after I left. The plan was straightforward. During dessert, I would ease into a discussion about our relationship, record the conversation from my own records, and then calmly lay everything out: how I knew about the affair, my health diagnosis, and the steps I intended to take moving forward. I would hand Jane a letter asking her not to contact me, my family, or come to the farm, with the letter witness right there. I would also present her with a briefcase full of evidence and signed divorce papers. Then I would simply get up and walk away. I hoped the public setting would motivate her to maintain her composure for the sake of her social standing. When the evening arrived, everything started as planned. Jane was in high spirits, gushing about how great our relationship had been over the years and how strong we were as a team. I steered the conversation in the direction I needed, asking her if she thought I treated her well, if I had ever hurt or abused her. She replied with a confident, "Of course not." Then I asked her the pivotal question: why did she cheat on me? That is when her demeanor changed completely. She stammered, saying she did not know what Carol had told me, but that it was wrong. I cut her off, telling her that I had known about the affair long before Carol said anything. Her confidence evaporated, and she sat there looking stunned, like a deer in headlights. She managed to whisper, "What?" I told her I needed to get through this without interruptions, and she nodded silently. I explained how, on the day of my medical appointment, I came home ready to have the hardest conversation of my life with the one person I thought I could lean on, only to find another man's car in the driveway. When I checked the cameras and saw they were set to privacy mode, I knew something was wrong. I decided to leave and head to the farm instead. I told her I had still managed to retrieve footage despite the privacy settings. When she looked like she wanted to interrupt to ask how, I raised my hand to stop her. I went on to explain my diagnosis and my decision not to fight the disease. I could see the heartbreak in her eyes, but it only made me angrier. How could she have the nerve to feel sorrow for me after what she had done? I signaled to our server, who brought my lawyer to the table. My lawyer handed me a briefcase and a folder with the letter. I signed the letter in front of the server and lawyer, asking the server to witness it. Afterward, I gave the letter to Jane and dismissed them. I concluded by giving Jane the briefcase. I told her that I knew far more than she could imagine, that the briefcase contained all the evidence of her affair, and that the divorce papers were already signed on my end. I told her she could sign them to start the process. I also informed her that I would not survive a contested divorce and that, as long as I was alive, she could stay in the house in town while I stayed at the farm. But I made it clear, I did not want to see or hear from her again. I let her know Carol would help her get home. Jane stayed composed in public, though she tried to interject with a feeble "but." I reminded her that I was done and left the restaurant. On my way out, I tipped the server generously and apologized to the restaurant owner for not giving him a heads up. As I was leaving, I saw my son waiting at the door with Carol. Carol passed me with a quick smile, though I could see the concern in her eyes for Jane. My son grabbed my truck, and his wife drove me to the farm. That night, my son and his wife stayed with me until midnight. I finally convinced them to go home, and I went to bed with a mix of relief and loss. The next day, the rest of the family came to check on me. It felt a bit overbearing, but it was good to have them around. Later, Carol came by and shared that Jane had fallen apart after I left the restaurant. By Saturday, Jane had reached out to her affair partner, only to realize he was just using her. Carol assured me that Jane had not asked her to reach out on her behalf but hinted that talking to Jane might help her move on. I reluctantly agreed to a 2-hour conversation at the farm, with conditions. Jane could bring someone for support, and I would have someone on my side. The meeting would be civil, but I would not tolerate blame-shifting or excuses. Jane chose Carol to accompany her, and I chose my daughter. The conversation went as expected. Jane cried, apologized, and tried to downplay the affair. I shut it down quickly. I laid out the terms of our separation, explaining that she would have a place to live until I passed away, but after that, the trustees would decide the fate of the house. I also clarified that she would receive nothing from my estate. She still had her pension, and that would have to suffice. When Jane asked, "Why will you not fight for me or us?" I nearly lost my temper but managed to calmly reply, "Because I do not care about you or us anymore." That response shattered her. After the meeting, Carol returned alone to update me. Apparently, the affair partner was now facing a forensic audit from the trust, and Jane had realized he was only interested in her for financial leverage. Carol also revealed that Jane had blown through her trust and would only have her pension to live on. Before Carol left, she caught me off guard by suggesting that if I needed companionship, I should give her a call. I was stunned but thanked her politely, telling her I would think about it. Right now, though, I am certain I do not want that kind of complication in my life. So here I am, finally with a bit of peace and quiet. The social groups will learn about both the breakup and my diagnosis soon enough, which means an endless stream of well-wishers. It is not something I can avoid forever, but I would rather not be treated differently. For now, it is time to make dinner and enjoy a quiet evening. Thank you all for your unwavering support, it means more than you know. First, let me start by saying I am doing alright. Still above ground, still above room temperature, and every day on my feet feels like a blessing. My coughing has gotten a little worse, and I am feeling some discomfort here and there. I also notice I get winded easier than I used to. But overall, I cannot complain. It has been a good week. Let us begin with Jane. She has gone underground. Her social standing in the community has taken a nosedive, and it happened faster than I ever expected. Once word got out about her affair, she was, politely, asked to step down from all her leadership roles. Most of her social circle has turned their backs on her, judging her harshly. Some have even confronted her outright, asking if she had pursued their husbands. She has tried reaching out to me a few times, even using intermediaries, but I have not responded. I told anyone who asked on her behalf that I have said all I needed to say. I know everything I need to know, and her need for closure is not my concern. Why should I care about her selfish need to wrap things up neatly? She knows exactly how I feel because I made it crystal clear. As for the affair itself, it lasted for at least 6 months. They took 3 trips together, each with its own little role-playing scenario. On one trip, they pretended to be newlyweds. On another, they acted as a couple celebrating a 20-year wedding anniversary. The last trip, they played strangers who happened to meet at the same hotel while on vacation. Role-playing seemed to be a key part of their dynamic. Jane even used my house for their rendezvous because it was comfortable for her and conveniently private. The house sits far back from the road, so no one driving by could see the cars in the driveway. She went to great lengths to keep the affair hidden. Jane bought herself a second car and stored it in a parking garage in town. She would swap cars when visiting her affair partner to ensure her usual vehicle was not recognizable. Clearly, she was very concerned about appearances, at least within her social circle. Maybe she was also worried about me finding out. Either way, the amount of effort she put into hiding this affair speaks volumes. It leaves no doubt in my mind about how premeditated her actions were. It solidifies my feelings and reassures me that I handled this situation the right way. I have no regrets. The drunken confession to Carol was only partly prompted by my unpredictability. It turns out that as soon as the notice of my sale of her affair partner's loan to the trust was received, he began pulling away from Jane. I imagine the pressure of almost getting caught, combined with his waning interest in her, pushed her over the edge. She got drunk and spilled everything to Carol. And well, you know how the rest unfolded from there. It has become painfully clear that her affair partner had ulterior motives. He was not in it for love or romance. He saw Jane as a means to an end, hoping she could influence me to ease the terms of his loan. Meanwhile, Jane seemed enamored with the lifestyle she imagined he could offer her. The whole situation is pathetic. While his motives might make Jane's actions even sadder, they do not excuse her in the slightest. If anything, it just makes them both look worse. It is true what they say, ugly people often find each other. Maybe if the despicable pair up with their own kind, it will leave the decent folks to find better matches. For those who choose to work through infidelity out of devotion, I respect that, but reconciliation was never an option for me. On another note, the affair partner is not happy about my daughter's plans regarding his loan. He seems to be preparing to fight her in court. From what I hear, he is scrambling to raise money from other investors to pay off the loan. Unfortunately for him, word of his actions has started to circulate among my business contacts. Remember when I said you invest in people, not just companies? Well, not many folks are eager to back him now. I am not entirely sure what my daughter has in store for his company, but I know she will do everything she can to protect the employees. She suspects there might be issues with the company's books, and for the sake of those employees, I hope it is nothing that cannot be fixed. On the home front, family time has been wonderful. This week, we all attended a high school basketball game together. I also hosted a poker night with some old friends, my son, and my grandson. It was great to sit around with them, sharing stories and laughter. My grandson got to see how we, old-timers, enjoy a good evening. I am hoping to fit in a few more nights like this while I still can. We also managed to have 3 family dinners this week. One night, Carol brought dinner over, and we ate and talked. I kept her at arm's length, though. I am just not ready to let her get any closer. The farm continues to bring me peace. Walking the fences, or driving, when my legs need a break, checking on the animals, chatting with the employees, and helping with equipment maintenance all give me a sense of purpose. Knowing that this farm will stay in the family and continue to thrive after I am gone fills me with a quiet satisfaction. It is comforting to think that a piece of me will live on here. Lately, I have had a steady stream of friends and acquaintances stopping by to visit. Someone mentioned the idea of a living wake, and I suppose this is what they meant. I am encouraging people to come by and see me. These visits are a joy, even if they might be our last time together. Thank you for suggesting the idea. It has brought a lot of warmth to my days. Thank you all for your continued support. It truly means the world to me. I am still here, holding on, but it has been a challenging time. I spent a few days in the hospital recently after being found unconscious, though I was still breathing. Since I have a do not resuscitate order, they did not intervene in that regard, but I never stopped breathing completely. Hospitals have always been a place I despised, and now, with my diagnosis, I hate them even more. I do not want to spend my final days in one of those places. Thankfully, I am back home now, though I am no longer allowed to drive off the farm. They barely let me drive on the property. Despite the restrictions, I am determined to keep up with my chores and enjoy the sunrise and sunset for as long as I can. I now have full-time home healthcare workers, or as I jokingly call them, babysitters. My family insisted on it, and I am not going to argue with them on this point. To be honest, I do not remember much from the incident until I woke up in the hospital. When I came to, most of my family and Carol were in the room with me. The doctor said I was stable and only wanted to observe me for a day or two, running some additional tests just to be sure. For almost my entire stay, I had either the twins, Sarah, or Carol by my side. There was one night, however, when no one was with me, and that is when Jane appeared. Somehow, she managed to pull the wife card on a nurse who was not aware of the specific instructions to keep her away. I was tired and groggy, but she came in playing the role of a sweet and devoted spouse. It was surreal. When I realized she was holding my hand and stroking my head, I pulled away. She looked hurt but then launched into a monologue of apologies, saying she did not mean anything she said to him, that she was just trying to use him, and so on. I sat there silently, refusing to engage, which clearly upset her. Jane's frustration grew, and her tone rose just enough to catch the attention of the nurse. The nurse handled the situation gracefully. She asked Jane to step outside under the pretense of needing to perform some checks. Once Jane was out of the room, the nurse closed the door and asked me if I was all right. I explained that Jane was my ex-wife and that there should be notes indicating she was not to be allowed in. The nurse apologized and asked how I wanted to proceed to minimize my stress. I asked her to call my emergency contacts, which she did. Within 45 minutes, Sarah, my daughter, and Carol arrived at the hospital. By the time they walked in, Jane had returned to the room and was continuing her quiet but insistent monologue. When she saw them, she understood she needed to leave. I quietly asked her to go, reminding her that none of the other patients deserved to witness a scene. For once, she complied, though not without giving me a quick peck on the forehead before leaving. I recoiled but accepted it as a small price for peace. After Jane left, Sarah and Carol apologized profusely. I told them there was no need, they have their own lives, and I cannot expect them to be around all the time. However, they immediately coordinated a schedule to ensure I would not be left alone again. My daughter also had strong words with the hospital staff to reinforce the instructions about Jane. The incident made one thing abundantly clear to me: Jane is like a drowning person, grabbing at anything to keep herself afloat. I am not special to her. I am merely a lifeline she hopes to use for her own survival. Every interaction with her reveals the darkness in her character. As for AP, he continues to prove himself to be as insufferable as ever. His accounting department, sensing the inevitable, has provided my daughter with a clear picture of the company's financials. While there is no criminal activity, it is evident that AP has exploited every loophole and perk to inflate his income at the company's expense. When my daughter takes control, he stands to lose 60% of his current benefits, which has him seething. I suspect she might eventually fire him and reduce his role to that of a silent minority owner. His flashy lifestyle is about to hit a major roadblock. Though he has threatened lawsuits, he has not taken any action yet. Meanwhile, his reputation and credit in the community are in shambles. Carol has become a more constant presence in my life. I have to admit, I appreciate her company and companionship. She has been staying over several nights a week, helping me navigate this uncharted territory where I must rely more and more on others. For now, it is purely platonic, just sitting close and sharing moments. I am taking it one day at a time, and while the road ahead is uncertain, I am grateful for the support I continue to receive. Thank you all for your kindness and encouragement. My dad passed away this past week. Over the past few days, I've been reading through his posts and the responses he received. It's incredible how clearly I can hear his voice in every word he wrote. Among his final requests was one meant for all of you. He called it his letter to his Reddit family, and I've been entrusted to share it with you, my Reddit family. If you're reading this, then my time here has come to an end. I hope this letter finds you well and brings you some comfort, even as I bid you goodbye. Throughout my journey, I've been blessed with the love and support of my family. But unexpectedly, I also found something profound here with all of you, an extended family. You became my Reddit family, and for that, I am deeply grateful. With your encouragement and thoughtful advice, I was able to accomplish one of my most cherished final goals, spending a beautiful, meaningful last Christmas with my family. It was a gift, to them and to myself, that I could not have achieved without having this outlet to vent and gain support. Your presence allowed me to shield my loved ones from my struggles during those precious moments, giving them the memory of a full-hearted father and husband. You also inspired me to leave a part of myself behind in ways I never would have imagined. The letters and videos I created for my family stemmed from your suggestions. I had so much fun making those silly little videos, knowing they'll have one more piece of me to hold on to. You planted that idea, and I can't thank you enough for giving me the courage to follow through. Now I have one final request. My family will be facing a whirlwind of emotions in the coming weeks and months. They may choose to share updates about Jane or other aspects of my story, but I've asked them to do so only if and when they feel ready. Please be patient and understanding as they navigate their grief. I trust you will honor this boundary, just as you've shown such kindness and respect to me. As I step into whatever lies beyond this life, I want to leave you with a message from my heart. None of us are promised tomorrow. Cherish the people you hold dear. Take the time to know yourself and to value your worth, no matter what anyone else might say. Be good to one another, and find joy wherever you can. I hope none of you ever have to walk the path I've traveled. But if you do, know that you are not alone. I'll be with you in spirit, sending strength and virtual hugs from wherever I am now. You are all worth so much more than you may realize. Never let anyone convince you otherwise. Saying thank you feels so small compared to what I feel for all you've given me. But it is the best I can do in this moment. Thank you for being part of my journey. Maybe we'll meet again one day, but let's not make it too soon. I want to begin by thanking all of you for everything you've done for my dad. I've read all the messages on his profile many times, and it brings me comfort knowing that part of him continues on. I'll keep it up as long as Reddit allows. To clear up any confusion, I'm his daughter. Some of you thought it was my brother who posted the letter earlier, but it was me. I'm so glad Dad left that letter for you all. He got to say everything he wanted to say. Today, I just want to talk about Dad. I miss him so much. I regret all the times I chose something else over spending time with him. I'm angry that he didn't fight harder against his illness. But at the same time, I love him for the way he held on to his dignity and how he faced his last days. Going through his posts, I saw how determined he was, how much love he had for us, and how focused he was on what mattered to him. I know this is just part of grieving, but it's still on my mind all the time. I'm so proud to be his daughter. Who I am today, and all the good things in my life, my family, my career, my happiness, are because of him. In his final weeks, he taught me more about life and family than I ever realized I needed to know. We're all struggling, but it's also made us appreciate each other more. And I know that's what he wanted. So, happy Father's Day, Dad. And happy Father's Day to all the dads out there. Now for an update. Dad didn't suffer like some do with his diagnosis. He passed away peacefully in his sleep. He had made arrangements for an autopsy, no matter what happened, so that his death wouldn't be used by Jane to contest his plans. He had paid for it all out of his estate, just like he always made sure to plan ahead for everything. It turns out he died of a heart attack, and even though he endured so much pain, there was some mercy in the end. Following his wishes, he was cremated. Part of his ashes were placed at a headstone in a small cemetery on the farm, and the rest were scattered while we were planting this spring. He got his wish to be part of the land he loved so much. We held the memorial at the farm, and Jane wasn't anywhere to be found. The funeral home had arranged for security to make sure if she tried to show up, no one would have to deal with it. One thing Dad had been trying to get us all to do for years was move to the farm. He'd even mapped out where homes could go. He hoped that when he retired, we would all come live there. He'd been talking about this for over 10 years, and we all just humored him, never really taking it seriously. We didn't think Jane would ever want to live there permanently. Looking back, I'm angry at myself for letting that woman have so much influence. But this year, we're starting to build new homes on the farm. My husband and I, along with my brother and his wife, will be moving there. We've already picked out a beautiful spot. My mom and Steve, at our suggestion, will move into Dad's house. It just feels right. We all want to be closer to each other. As for Jane, I thought I knew what it meant to be a pariah, but seeing her world crumble has shown me the real meaning. She's aged at least 20 years in a matter of months. Her personality has completely changed. She tried to contest Dad's will and trust, but she didn't succeed. She did get some shared assets, but Dad had already given away what he wanted. The main issue was the house in town. It had been his before their marriage, so she had no claim on it. She begged us to let her inherit it. To be honest, Dad didn't care about that house. It was just a tool to him. In one of the more ruthless moments of my life, I told her that if she changed her last name back to her maiden name, I'd give her the house. The house wasn't worth much, but watching her lose Dad's last name was worth more. She took the deal. I don't think she'll stay in the house. I expect her to sell it and leave. We'll see. The AP is long gone. After the company was valued for the loan exchange, the trust ended up owning 80% of the company. We made a fair offer to buy his 20% from him, and he accepted. We haven't heard a word from him since. If he'd focused on improving the company instead of going after Jane, he'd be in a better position, but he didn't learn that lesson. Frankly, I don't care. Our partner and I have chosen a new CEO, and the company is on the road to recovery. Carol received a 1% share in the trust. We'll take care of her, as Dad would have wanted. She's been a constant presence in our family, and we'll continue to consider her family for everything she did for Dad. Once again, I want to thank you all for the support you gave him. We think of you often, and we're grateful for everything you did for him.